check. Why don't you tell my listeners what you had for breakfast this morning?
Well, I had cereals like every morning with milk, and then I had a chocolate bar.
Nice. What kind of cereal? Did you go healthy cereal or you go Fruity Pebbles?
Yeah, I started to look on the content, of the package and try to be more healthy than usual, but it doesn't always work, because I mix them. And then sometimes, the unhealthy stuff goes on top and it's a lot more than the story.
Well, did it have marshmallows in it? I think that's the marshmallows
I think it's an American thing. Marshmallows big here. It's not a thing.
Well, I think marshmallows in general are kind of odd. I'm not a huge marshmallow fan, but my kids.
You do that. I think you do that on the campfire side.
Yeah, that's right. S'mores.
That's something I never understood. Basically, it smells gross and it tastes. But anyway, you do that.
Yeah, and they're messy. I'm not a big s'mores guy either. Whenever we'll have s'mores parties because our kids love them, but really they're not very good. I mean, it's a mess. Exactly. And you burn the marshmallow, so you're eating like char marshmallow. I don't want to eat that. I don't want that. I'll just eat the chocolate. I'm good with that. So
right.
Well, cool. I think we're sounding good here. So why don't we jump right into it? So why don't you tell my listeners what you're currently raising money for over on Kickstarter?
Yeah, right. So we have a Kickstarter campaign, and we're building a high-tech water gun.
That's right. High-tech water guns.
Control, not for police or anything. It's just entertainment. It's, in the 90s, we have seen great water guns, the Super Soaker brand. Yeah. It was big. When I was a kid, I had, I don't know how many. And we haven't seen good water guns since then. And what we do, we build a high-tech water gun that is, basically the best water gun in the world.
Right. Well, it looks sweet in the video. I mean, it looks like, man, you can really do some pretty sweet stuff with it. It definitely kicks all the water guns I have at my house here for my little like kids water park area. We have all these like cheap dollar ones that are just like, they break. And this is the real deal here. So why are you working on new water guns? I mean, it's just, you just saw a need in the marketplace, or is it something that you've just like, you love making this type of stuff?
Well, as I said, when I was a kid, I loved water guns. And, as you grow older, you go to work and stuff, you have other things on your mind. But I remember that I had these great water guns when I was a kid. And then, we had a couple of friends of mine, we had a rubber boat tour. So you take a rubber boat and you float on the river, have a couple of beers. And I wanted to buy a good water gun. I remember that there were good water guns in the 90s. So why not buy one now on Amazon or whatever? Right. And I couldn't get one. It was impossible. You can't go and buy good water guns anymore. And I was like, that's strange. Usually it doesn't go that way. Usually stuff gets better.
Right.
And in that case, it didn't. And so we started to think, well, maybe we should go and build a good water gun of our own.
Right. Well, where does that process start then? I mean, obviously, a lot of people have that like, oh yeah, we should do this. But you obviously took it to the next step. So what kind of started the process to developing a water gun, and what were you trying to get out of it? Like what was the conversations around that of like, I want my water gun to do this and this and this?
Well, I'd say that in the movies, they always portray it as, as a kind of stroke of genius. You're like, okay, this is a good product for, there's a market for it and anything. But I think most ideas start really slow. You're like, I should build a water gun. And then you're thinking about it, and then you do something else, and then you come back to it after 2 weeks. And then you buy a water gun, you disassemble it, you look at it, and this is basically how it started for us, So I asked a friend, he's an engineer, and I was like, I'm a designer, so maybe we can do something together. And he was like, why not? I don't have a lot of time, but I can help you out. And basically that was how it got started. But then of course part-time, on the weekends, and then as it got more serious and as we delivered results, obviously, more people came in and we were like, okay, we really want to do this. This is, a product that we want to sell. And obviously, there's a huge step between I built something, a prototype stage for myself, and this is going to be produced mass market. So that was huge. And we started to realize that pretty quickly.
So, what was some of the things that I guess just that it sounds like, so you're a designer. So do you do this? Have you designed other things? What type of designs do you do that thought you could actually design this and make it?
Well, obviously, I think ignorance is bliss, because at the beginning, I wasn't qualified to build a water gun. And sometimes I think I'm not still now. I was in the car industry, in the automotive industry, and I was designing car parts, for the interior. And that is cool, and that's a good job, but it has nothing to do with the water gun. It's
Right.
not the toy industry. It works completely different. You try to, reach different prices. You have different criteria on what to build and how safe it must be and all these things. And so I came from a background that was slightly similar to or related to what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there's so much that you learn. And if you don't come from the toy industry, you notice pretty quickly that there's so much stuff that you need to adhere, that you need to understand. There's so many rules and regulations like in any industry. So that was something that a big learning for us.
Well, what's one example of that? I mean, I've interviewed a couple of toy people, and most of my knowledge comes from that Netflix show that was on the Toys That Made Us. I love that. That was fabulous. So like most of my toy knowledge comes from that. But like, what are some of the things that maybe were roadblocks or just hindrance, or you're just like, oh, I had no idea. What is there any examples of it you could give us?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, where to start? So when you sell a toy, even if it's not for kids, you must assume that kids will pick it up. So that's something that was a big learning. So I cannot say, okay, this is a toy for 20-year-olds or 18-year-olds. You can always, you must assume that a younger kid will pick it up because it's a toy.
Sure.
And so the rules say that, for instance, when you have a toy for a kid that shoots something, like a Nerf gun or projectile, something like that. Well, it has to be within certain limits, not to be able to damage, eyes mostly, but also, the skin, make no bruises. Right. So that was something that was completely new to us, because we suddenly had to understand what, 9-year-old would potentially do with that gun, even though it was never intended for a 9-year-old.
Right,
so that's
right.
Learning for us.
So in your mind, you really were making, I guess from the start, did you always envision making a water gun that was for an older crowd, 20 plus or whatever it might be, college type students? Or did you envision that, hey, kids would use this would be, I don't know, my 7-year-old would pick it up or whatever? Like what did you guys envision at first?
I mean, I wouldn't mind, especially in the beginning, I wouldn't mind if in the end kids would pick it up. But I think especially we as a group, as a, circle of friends, we wanted to build something that we would use ourselves.
Right.
And, being between 20 and 30, that was something that we targeted at. And we said, yeah, this is a water gun for grown-ups.
Right. That's cool. What was, outside of maybe just learning the toy industry and some of the stuff you're just talking about, was there any sort of major roadblock that you ran into in terms of, I don't know, you just couldn't make something you wanted to make? Was there anything that like you guys had to do a big pivot on?
Yeah, I would say that we completely underestimated the science in a water gun. It doesn't sound like much, you say like, how hard can it be? Let's just, there's water that goes in there and goes out there and you need to build up pressure or whatever. But it's rocket science. There's like, you tap into all these different parts and fields that you didn't know exist, like, nozzle technology. Yeah, there's a huge field. It's like science that is research being done right now as we speak on nozzle technology.
I would have thought that either. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought, I don't know, people know how to build a good nozzle, it's like simple geometry, but it is not, and nozzles that are built today are a lot better than 5 years ago and 10 years ago. It's like a continuous research being done, and you need to understand that, because if you say, I built the best water gun in the world, it's better than anything else, well, you better understand your nozzles, right?
Sure, yeah.
Something like that. And yeah, there's different fields, that you need to tap into, and you need to understand, and you need to ask people. And those people may not want to have anything to do with your stuff. They are like, I don't know, let's say fluid dynamics, nozzles. These are smart people. They have studied and they, envision that they work on, I don't know, rockets or, they are really smart. And when you come to them, you say, okay, look, I need someone really smart to work on that nozzle for my water gun. They might be like, well, no, let's not do that. That's really problematic.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, and so I'm assuming that probably falls in line with how the trigger works, the aerodynamics of it, just how you hold the water. It's probably like every single compartment to some degree, right?
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Well, on the flip side of that, was there a moment though where you maybe got the prototype and you were like, "Wow, this is exactly what we wanted"? Was there a flip side where it was like, "This is awesome"? We've got 4 or 5 of these, and we went out to a lake and had a good time. Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, once we got the first prototype ready and it worked roughly the way we wanted, it was the first time that we could really try this out. I mean, the single feature that we always advertised was, okay, you'll be able to shoot water bullets. So these are really compact and they stay together and they fly really fast and really far, and you can hit someone from the distance, and it's a lot cooler than the constant stream and stuff. Right. And we thought we were pretty sure it was a good idea, but we didn't know. I mean, we couldn't know that this was really cool. You know, maybe right. It was lame. We wouldn't be able to say. And the first time we tested it, we realized, okay, this is cool. This is going to be fun. And if we are having fun, other people might too.
Right.
And that was huge for us.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you're running a very, very popular campaign right now on Kickstarter. Are you still working at the other job, or is this what you're doing full time?
No, we all do this full time now.
Nice.
We realized, I mean, this is also a big learning that part time you can do only so much.
Sure.
It's not. I mean, if you want to have a product that is mass produced that a lot of people will enjoy, it's not. You cannot do that on your
right.
weekend.
Right, on the weekend, on the side gig, the side hustle,
totally,
changing the water gun world on the side hustle.
No, I mean, maybe you can, maybe, I'm not smart enough. I mean, I these books like, 4-hour startup weeks or whatever. I know. I'm not sure, but I'm not convinced. I think that at some point we said, okay, everyone who's currently working on this, do you want to do this full time? Because we really need all of you to, remain here in the office all the time.
Sure.
And everyone said, yeah, let's do that. Let's quit the jobs. And
that's cool. So where'd you grow up? Like where'd you grow up living and stuff like that?
I know, like, we all grew up, I think, in Germany. Most of us. I grew up in Cologne,
okay,
very west of Germany, and that was most of us. I mean, we have one guy from France, one from the Netherlands, but we are mostly a German team.
Mostly German. And what'd your parents do when you were growing up?
They're lawyers.
Okay.
They were not amused when they heard that we built a water gun now. I mean, we had good jobs, and they were like, yeah, let's just keep that. They're pretty good with it. It's also. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so where do you think this entrepreneur spirit came into? I mean, in terms of trying to to pivot from a stable career and a job like that over to making water guns. Do you think that was something that, I don't know, do you have a grandparent or just something in the blood to tell you to jump and try this?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. When I think, I don't see that in my background, it would be totally sensible for me to, want to be an entrepreneur. I believe that mostly it's being stubborn and to some degree, being like, okay, I don't, I want this different, or maybe I can do this, and then maybe it's it's hard to say, maybe I think to some degree it's a bit of ignorance, because you don't know what awaits you in the beginning, and then it's stubbornness, you right. Just keep going. I believe that's, when I look at my team and myself, that's probably what we all share. I would say.
That's interesting. Well, so I think this is an interesting thing because there's a lot of people, I think, in your position where they're trying to either use Kickstarter or move into this next phase from another career. Was there any metrics though that you were looking at? Like, hey, listen, I'm we feel really confident that we'll do X, Y, Z sales, or did you get some investment money? Like, what were some of the metrics for you to actually make this jump and feel some security in it?
Right.
If you have any security in it, maybe, maybe you don't, but it seems like you're doing all right now with the Kickstarter.
No, yeah, I think I can probably give some advice. For us, Kickstarter was the most important thing because this is a proof of market, obviously. And it's the first time that you can say, okay, look, these are the numbers, and, Kickstarter is only this percentage of the market. And if we tap into that, it shows that there's a real demand for what we do. So everything that we did, we have been working on this much longer than I would like to admit, for about 2 years, I would say, maybe 1.5. Everything we did was targeting towards Kickstarter because we knew that Kickstarter is our platform. If this product doesn't do well on Kickstarter, what does? Because it's mostly tech geeks, mostly people who look for something fresh. It's the audience is more male than female, which obviously is good for Watergun.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, this is our platform. And if it doesn't work there, we can basically go back to our jobs. And everything we did in the 1.5 years was specifically targeted at being good, serving the purpose of Kickstarter, a successful Kickstarter campaign. So we were collecting, obviously, like the usual stuff, like collecting email addresses, trying to build a crowd on Facebook, all these things. But I would say that the most important thing is, understanding the value of Kickstarter. Is it good for my product? I've seen, we are in an, there's different startups here in this building. It's an incubator sort of, and it doesn't work for every product. It's not sensible to run a Kickstarter campaign no matter what. And if you have a product that feels right, that is a good thing for Kickstarter, that will work on Kickstarter, is the best tool you have. Besides the money, it also gives you great data on your demographics and everything. It's huge.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It's one of the hardest messages that we've gotten around to our clients of like, they're so caught up into the money. And I'm like, listen, the money's fine. It's definitely a part of the equation, but the data that you get, how people respond, the comments, you might get a comment that shapes your next 3 products, like that you didn't even think about. I was like, so that's the stuff that I can't put in a proposal. I can't promise you, but like I see it all the time. So I'm like, just trust, so the money's a great part, but you mentioned, so you are part of an incubator program right now. Is that through? Right. How is like the startup culture like where you are right now? Is it booming? Is it something that you have a ton of resources, or are you, still kind of out there on your own doing it, most of it? Or like, what's it like where you are right now?
Well, so first of all, we are in Germany, and that's very traditional. So we are not a startup culture. We are not, at the forefront of, new model startup technology. And basically what we have a room and we have an office. And I think what we try to do here in Germany is we attach startup incubators to universities. We say there's a lot of research being done. So universities start to build these incubators where, young teams can come and, crash for a few months. And that's basically how it works. And I think that's a great program because it helps you in the beginning. You don't want to hire people. You don't want to rent an office. It's too expensive in the beginning. You just have you and a couple of friends can start working. And I think in this bubble within the incubator building, we have a great culture. Obviously, like-minded people who are working on something. Also, there's some transfer of knowledge. Obviously, some hardware startups can teach us a thing or two, and vice versa. But I would say that, and that's probably all of Europe, generally there's not a great startup culture in Europe right now. It's developing. We have more TV shows like in the US, and we have more like it's become a bit of a startup entrepreneurs become like small scale rock stars at the beginning at the moment. But it's slowly developing, and I think we are still far behind compared to the US, for instance.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like you mentioned, and this is what I've seen and heard from most of these interviews from anybody, not in the United States, basically, is that it is tied so much into universities, which I don't think we do actually a very good job here. Universities, we kind of just be like, all right, good luck, bye, and then you have these sort of bubbles that pop up and so on and so forth. So I always find it intriguing, just as a bigger conversation of what the United States actually needs to do to actually, I think the universities are not being utilized enough, or the universities are keeping huge percentages of the ideas. They're owning 80% of it. And it's like, well, there's no profit margins all of a sudden. So that's probably a whole nother conversation, but let's flip over to the actual Kickstarter. Let's talk about some of the data points on this campaign right now. So as we're talking, you still have about 27 days to go, which is still a long time. And you had I'm looking at in US dollars, so I don't know if you are as well, but it's about $60,000 goal, and you're currently sitting at $336,000. So and a ton of backers, almost just over 1,900 backers. So this is a hugely popular campaign right now. So I guess you mentioned a little bit, and you kind of said, this is some of the standard stuff, but maybe you could walk me and the listeners through a little bit of just what were you looking for before you launched? You obviously mentioned emails, building a Facebook audience, but was there any sort of numbers you were trying to get to? You wanted to have 3,000 email signups or whatever it might have been. What were some of the metrics that you were looking at before you launched the campaign?
Right. So first thing that we thought we understood was that our product is not used by one person alone. It's a product that you use with friends. So of course it depends, but we knew that we need to talk to people who have a lot of friends, same age, same group, and they would, then buy it together. So we try to build fans on Facebook, not only by themselves, but also within a certain group. We try to go into different Facebook groups, different, it depends, sometimes Instagram, the different channels, and we try to reach people who would then, share interests that are mostly done with other friends, like, I don't know, sports that you don't do alone. There's a lot of group sports. And we understood that if we can target those, they would then tell their friends, well, this is a cool thing, let's buy that together.
Sure.
And that was a very important learning for us, because we didn't try to compete against other water guns. We knew their water guns are out there, and you can go buy for $1, $2 water gun, and people will still do that, and they would not switch to our water gun. That's a completely different field. So we needed to somehow get the idea across that there's a new toy, a new cool toy, and you want to build it, you want to buy it in a group, and you want to play with it together. And the best thing you can do is basically build a crowd around sports that are done together, and somehow try to draw them to your side and say, look, this is something new, it's fresh, it's cool, you would like it, and your friends would too.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really spent some time on this, basically a buyer persona, right? Like you really kind of stood back and said, who's really going to buy this thing? It's not everybody, right? But it's, there's an audience that's going to buy it, and what are they doing, already in their day-to-day life, and this would just fit into it. So it sounds like that was a pretty smart move early on, is to kind of spend some time on that thought pattern.
And also, I think you underestimate how drastic that can be. I mean, we knew that our audience was mostly male, but we didn't know the extent to which that statement was true.
Right.
In the end, it turned out that 99.95% of the people that visited our website were male. So it's like almost everyone. We knew it was, the majority, but not that much. So I think it's really important to get hard data behind your assumptions. And even if you're right about something, you might not be right enough. You might not go in that direction enough.
Now, when you start off, when you started off, it sounds like you were doing some Facebook ads, right? It sounds like I think you mentioned.
Right.
So were you targeting 100% male at first, or did you try a little bit of male and female just to see what the reaction was? Did you do any A/B testing at all?
Yeah, of course we use that. In the beginning, we tried to target everyone, because it's very important to question your assumptions, I think. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. I think it's not worthwhile to spend thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, especially in the beginning. Nobody really cares. Nobody cares about a product that will sometime be on Kickstarter and then be shipped sometime later than that. It's like, it doesn't really matter, but it's important for you. It will tell you something. It will tell you exactly who likes your ads, and you try with different ads. You try to incorporate different things, different statements, and that was huge for us.
So inside of your team, how are you putting together the team to be able to do all the stuff you're talking about? I mean, obviously you had the designer and prototype and the person to make it, but this is a whole nother animal we're talking about now too. Were you actively looking for people, or is this something that you learned, or, it's just so much, right? So like, how did you start Googling? How did you guys get this knowledge before you launched?
Do you mean how we get new people on board, or?
No. I mean, just as a team, like putting your team together. So who, was it you running the Facebook ads? Was it a team member? How did you figure out some of the stuff before you went to execute it?
Well, I mean, I think in the beginning, everyone does a little bit of everything, right? So you don't have a dedicated person to, I don't know, do fluid dynamics. And at some point, you realize, okay, I cannot do this anymore because I'm not smart enough. I don't understand that. But over time, we realized that communication, and Facebook was a huge thing of our campaign. It was hugely important to get in touch with our community and, keep going, keep posting new stuff. So we had one person dedicated only to preparing Facebook, preparing our community, preparing our Kickstarter, in a sense, because that later translated into people buying on Kickstarter. So, but it really depends on the product. For us, it was huge. It was very important. It may be if you, I don't know, have a software product that is, I don't know, IT related, whatever, it may not be important to build a crowd, obviously.
Right.
But then again, Kickstarter may not be the best platform to publish. And so one person was communications only, building a crowd, and two people were building, like one engineer, one designer. It's a match made in heaven, really. It's like how you do it. And one is going for the looks, the other for the mechanics. And that was the core team.
That's cool. That's awesome. So what are you doing then? I mean, with obviously a lot of time left, what are you doing to sort of keep the momentum going so that it doesn't kind of get stale? I mean, right now you're still early in the campaign, it looks like here. So what are you doing just to keep that momentum going? Obviously you're on this podcast, which is huge for you. But other than that, what are some of the things you're talking about right now to keep it going?
Well, as you said earlier, the money on Kickstarter is nice, but there's other things that are equally, if not more important. And one of them is the crowd, that you can now ask stuff. It's like people like your product. They're early innovators that love what you do. And you can now start asking them stuff, like what about stretch goals? You know, and it's not like we have to decide this now. We can ask them, you know, what is something that you would like? Obviously, we cannot do anything. You know, if it costs a lot more to produce, you know, maybe we cannot do it. But you cannot, you know, tap into that crowd and ask them, you know, what would you like to see? And that's something that we plan to do, you know. And then if there's cool stretch goals, people will like it more, and maybe, you know, ask their friends, you know, and say, like, look, I want to reach a stretch goal because I get this for free, you know, whatever.
Right.
And I think, again, this is for us important. It may not be working on every product, but for us, it's hugely important to stay in contact with the crowd, and use that data, use the people that, you know, are your fans right now, and somehow work with them. And that is going to be our next goal for Kickstarter campaign.
That's great.
Figure out cool stretch goals and post them.
That's great. What has there been anything that's kind of, I guess, struck you as really odd in the campaign so far? I mean, you mentioned a bunch of mostly men went to the website, but anything that you're seeing, like, I don't know, a country that's popped up that, like, oh wow, we're at a bunch of orders from Japan or something. I don't know, just something that's been intriguing to you at all?
Oh, well, it's certainly interesting, and it's interesting to see that in the beginning, most backers were from Germany, because, you know, we had been working in Germany most of the time. We had been trying to, you know, find fans and collect email addresses, so it was only natural that it would start here. But then very quickly, the US took over, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because the Kickstarter culture is stronger in the US. Maybe, you know, water guns have always been, you know, water gun industry actually is a lot bigger in the US. Maybe Americans love their guns. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a part of it. Yeah.
But it was interesting to see. And also what we saw is that sometimes we had backers that, that in countries that we didn't ship to. So that only, you know, I don't know, pledged $1 or $2 or $10, something like that. And we had quite a lot of them because we didn't ship into all countries. And that showed us that there was general interest, you know. If, for instance, we don't ship to Japan, but we have, I don't know, a dozen backers in Japan that, you know, I just like to follow the campaign. And I think, I'm not sure if we can do that because we're not familiar with how to ship into all countries, but it certainly tells you that you should, you know, look for these things. You know, if you have backers in countries that you don't even ship to, why do they follow you? Well, because they like what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there, speaking of shipping, is there any sort of major headaches? Are you shipping from Germany, you think, on all this stuff? Or, like, how did you kind of attack shipping in general for the campaign?
Well, that thing is huge. I mean, you could hire someone just to figure out that that subject in itself. Well, it's really problematic. We are probably shipping from China. You know, we're going to assemble parts here, then going to work in China, and then, you know, our team will be split because the way everything is stored and assembled, and then we will ship from China to the world. But then, you know, it's huge because you have taxes, you have regulations, how to, you know, what kind, I mean, you probably know that already. Yeah. That's a huge thing. And I think every Kickstarter startup or any startup shipping into the world will underestimate how much work that is.
Yeah. It's every single client we've ever had. They're always like, oh, it won't be that bad. I'm like, no, trust me, go and figure this out, because it's huge. Especially, I mean, and I think this seems like it's a bigger product too. So, like, did you figure out packaging and all that sort of stuff in terms of shipping? Like, you know, and like put all that cost into the equation as well?
Yeah, don't get me started. So you have different pallet sizes, right? In the US, in Asia, in Europe. And then you have, for container ships, you have also different container sizes, and depending on, you know, don't get me started. So you need to figure out the size for your box that fits best on all these pallets, but you cannot, I mean, it won't fit perfectly on all of them. So you need to make an estimation into which country you are shipping the most packages, and then you will lose some space because your package is not perfect for that pallet, for that container ship, and then you need to make a calculation, and that is huge. I mean, that takes some time, and, you know, it's a huge Excel spreadsheet that as long as my leg, and yeah, you need to do that, obviously.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. We've had other clients that experience the exact same thing. They're like, I didn't realize any of that. I was like, yeah, it's challenging to launch a product. It's not for everybody. So, all right. So you've got, you know, your 27 days ago that while we're talking right now, and then you got the, whatever, 10 to 14 days before all the money drops into the account and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
What starts your next process? How do you start putting water guns in everybody's hands? That all your backers, what starts happening?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think after Kickstarter starts, there's a huge amount of gravity all of a sudden, because you have these fans and they ask you questions and they want to know what's happening. And I think at the heart of any good Kickstarter campaign is transparency. So what we will do, I mean, we will make mistakes, obviously, and we will have delays, probably. I don't know. But what is most important is that we keep updates all the time. That we say, okay, every so many weeks we are going to post updates. And what we're planning right now is we have everything laid out. We have the designs, and it is true that you go to Kickstarter when you need money for tooling. And that's what we will do now. I mean, first thing is that we, the larger parts, the tools will be prepared. Obviously, they are quite expensive for injection molding. And we will then start, to think about, okay, we get these tools from here. We need quality checks. We need to get all the regulations right. We have a small battery inside. You need to start all these processes. And they take a long time, to get permission to sell it into, let's say, the US. You need to get these things going, and we will try to start these things as early as possible, especially the ones that take a long time.
Sure. Big steps here to get these things delivered. It's a lot. So where can people learn more information outside of the Kickstarter? How can people kind of dive into your guys' world? Where can they follow you? How do people dive in?
Well, I mean, the usual social channels, I would say. I mean, Facebook is probably best because we post everything, Facebook, and it goes from there. And I would say that if you're not already backing us, you might want to back us with $1, whatever, to keep the news, because I think we have something in store in the future. The product is going to develop quite well, I believe, I hope. And I think it's going to be a bumpy ride, but it's worthwhile.
That's awesome. We call those people gawker backers. That's a term we came up with. So those people who just want to gawk, I'll give you $1. I just want to sit around.
Right, I don't mind.
Yeah, I back tons of campaigns. Because I love seeing what's going on, the communication. There's some things I can't buy everything I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, this is great. Well, Sebastian, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us and my listeners. This is really great, and you've got an awesome campaign, and I wish you continued success in the future. And really great stuff, man. Good luck on everything.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.